Good morning, everybody. I am Captain Tommy Scoville, and you are riding on the lifeboat. Boy, I dig that. Well, good morning, crew. So, today is one of those days. It's absolutely bizarre in my world. So, let's see who we got. We got CK, M. Hunt, good to see you. John, good morning. Charlie Murphy, Tommy Bird, Dennis, hey, Coburn, good to see you. And Mr. Wolf. And there is my boy, Spanks Calhoun. So, all right, so let me tell you all of the weird stuff happening. This is one of those days that live on so many different levels that it's absolutely bizarre. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. There's so much going on in my head that has never, ever gone on before. I've never had to deal with any of this. And I'm not complaining. I promise you I'm not complaining, but it's really, really strange. Okay, before I went live today, I was sitting here and I was firing texts back and forth with my son at 5 a.m. And sitting here, and I got this set up again, very similar to how I had it before, but I've got screens everywhere, and the things that you guys are seeing are scrolling up. And you know what? Everybody's got things in their life, right? At all given times, everybody's got some issues, right? A horrendously insecure husband who seems upset by your success. That's going on right now for somebody on the boat. And, looking back, through the lens of history, there's some people that were talking about infidelity and, what that did to a marriage. And it's just, there's a lot going on at all given times. And and very often, I deal with this stuff because you guys reach out to me, right? So I talk a lot to a lot of people about a lot of stuff. I've done many shows that I talk about the difficulty to cope with emotions that aren't baseline. Doesn't really matter what the emotion is, right? You find a drug addict who's been using for 30, 40 years and drop $100,000 in cash on them. Drop $1 million in cash on them. They'll implode in a matter of a week, right? They have absolutely no idea how to deal with that kind of happiness. And now they're uncomfortable in their own skin because of that level of happiness, and they're sitting on enough cash to buy enough dope to last them, you would think, an eternity. They'll probably have it done in about 6 months. And I bring that up because this morning is one of those, it's one of those days that I really don't know. I'm learning, and I'm walking my way through it. And the reason I'm telling you this is because this is how I cope, right? You guys are my coping mechanism in a lot of ways. So yesterday I picked my daughter up at the airport at about 5-ish. Right around the time the boat was going live, I was at the airport to get my daughter. And I came home, and I know she was a little tired. It was a long day. She left California really, really early to get here. It was one of those awful flights where you're changing planes in different cities, and it was a long day. So I know she was tired, but I got home and had a pizza. I called Lady Crispin and did a bit of a FaceTime with her and my daughter, like the three of us sitting there, and we went to bed really early. And everybody was just wasted, just tired as hell. So we all went to bed. And this morning I woke up and my daughter's sleeping 8 feet away from me, and let me tell you that there was a lot of my life that I just did not think that was ever going to happen. There was a lot of my life where I just wherever she was hating me. And it's crazy as she was thinking the same thing about me. But so that's a lot to deal with. That's a really serious amount of happiness that a guy like me is not used to. And then one of the biggest concerns I've had, and I'm not trying to make anybody feel bad, I assure you, but one of the biggest concerns I've had for a very long time now is my son. I'm not dumb, and I knew that he he was not in the best of places, and that has been really an issue for me. And I prayed about it, but we've been obviously in a lot of communication recently, and he's doing awesome. So I'm sitting there making coffee this morning, and I'm thinking to myself, my son is sober. You know what I mean? My daughter is 8 feet away, sound asleep, and this is like from a dad's standpoint, this is the kind of contentment that I honestly never thought would happen. Not even half of that equation. Having her here, I just didn't see happening. But having my boy sober and to be one of my five, so to speak. I mean, I don't know that we've ever discussed it like that, but I was sharing with my kid this morning that this is a bit overwhelming, in the best of ways, right? But this is a bit overwhelming, and overwhelming for a recovering drug addict. I'm sorry, my cat's tearing up the place. Overwhelming for a recovering drug addict usually means that you need to alter yourself. So what I'm doing instead is I'm spending a really serious devotional time here to making sure that everybody in my life knows what's going on, right? I'm going to be sharing every aspect of my life because that is the way that I keep from using. Come here. Come on. That's a good kitty. So that is, this is why I'm having this conversation. And this is like one of those twofold things. So let's start with as we unpack this thing, let's start in the beginning. Let me explain to you how the separation from my child went. And we've probably talked about this, but there's some of you have reached out and talked to me about it. And there's kind of this misconception that the reason my daughter was not in my life was because I was in prison, which is not the case. The reason I was not in my daughter's life was because I was kicked out of my daughter's life. And this, in association with my son being gone and a lot of other things, my son they couldn't kick out of my life. He was old enough where he wasn't going to put up with that. But it caused a downward spiral that ended up with me robbing banks and doing all kinds of other crap. But the conduit between me and my daughter was always Spanx. Like he would say to me, she's doing good. And I always tell her that you love her. And I know he did because, she and I have talked about it, but it's a difficult process, right? To unpack all of this. But I want you guys to understand that, the cause and effect of prison it wasn't like she and I were best of friends. And then I went to prison and she had to deal with losing dad. There was nothing like that at all. And at the age of 12, while I was in prison, she basically talked to her mom and said, I really want to know who my dad is. And I was talking to Spanx and he said, you know what? Your daughter wants to talk to you. And I said, and your mother's going to put up with that? And he said, nah, she's cool with it. So for the last 4 years, maybe 5 years that I was incarcerated, I was emailing with her pretty regularly. But until I got out and she could basically, we could talk to one another or FaceTime one another, it was still just, one of those situations where we weren't solid, right? These days, we're really solid. But this morning to realize that all of the fears that I've had concerning my son are really not around. And they've been, that's something I've been praying about for a really long time. And I've told him this, but I was praying he'd hit rock bottom, which is probably a mean prayer, but it was the only one that made any sense to me. I knew that he's an intelligent kid, right? Probably more than he needs to be sometimes. But I knew that once rock bottom hit, he was going to find sobriety. There was not a doubt in my mind about that. So that was my prayer. To have him where he is, to have him, as a guy that I can call and say, hey, this is what's going on in my life and get legit advice from him is absolutely mind-bending. Now, then comes guilt. True story. Because at any given time, I'm working with probably 40 of you at some level, right? Some really intimately, like I'm super involved in what's going on in your heads. Some just sort of tangentially on sort of the periphery. I'm there and I'm dealing with some of the stuff, but it's one of those situations where you just sort of talk and I listen and there's not much. And then there's people that really ask for advice and such. The level of guilt that I feel when I talk to somebody who's going through it, when I talk to somebody whose child's not in their life or they're going through a divorce or any of those things, this is an emotion that's really odd for me because I have absolutely no reason to feel guilty, right? I didn't cause any of the problems that people are having, and I most assuredly, don't sort of strut around and, hey, look at me, I didn't do anything to make this happen. I really didn't. I mean, the fact that I'm sober has certainly made a really big difference in all things, but this is just sort of a grace of God kind of thing that I'm where I am right now. But when I hear people who are really struggling, I feel like crap. I feel so bad for those people. And it's such a hollow thing to say to them, you know what? I was in a worse place like 10 years ago. You just don't know what the future is going to bring. It really is not something anybody wants to hear if they're having a bad time. But it's exactly what the truth is. If you were to go back even 9 years from right now, 8 years from right now, because my sobriety date was in June. So if you went back to the year I got sober, right now, I was in a prison collecting money for a gang for all intents and purposes, and doing dope every single day. It was absolutely the lowest of the low that I had ever been as a human being. I mean, just scumbag. There's no other way to put it. I was at the worst I had ever been. If you had come to me that day and said, 8 years from today, you'll be running a group therapy session at 5 o'clock in the morning. Your son will be sober. Your daughter will be sleeping in a room 8 feet away, right? You'll own your own car and house. There ain't no way in hell. There is no way in hell that you could have convinced me of any of that. I don't think you could have convinced me that I would have been free. Truthfully. When you're that strung out and you're in the life, you realize that as soon as you get out, they're going to be looking over your shoulder, and there's no way you're going to pass a piss test. Not once in your life. How are you going to pass a drug test? It's not like a job drug test where you bring in a Whizzinator or you carry in a little fake pee. I'm talking about the feds, right? Drop your pants to your ankles like you're a little kid going to the bathroom, and you stand in a corner so that there's a mirror looking at your junk one way and a mirror looking at your junk another, and the cop is standing just to the right of that, right? Really fun stuff, right? Embarrassing mornings. But there's no way. I really believed that, you know what? An OD might not have been the worst thing. There's no way you can afford to overdose inside because of the amount of dope that you'd have to store up to make that happen. But you could not have convinced me that this was a possibility. No way in hell. I mean, forget the lifeboat part, which is just astounding. But if you just said where I was going to be as a father, ain't no way in hell you can convince me that. So if you think about where you're at right now, and I know that, when people say stuff like this, I used to want to kill them. What the hell's this got to do with my struggle? But the truth of the matter is, you just don't have a clue what can happen if you just get the drugs out of your life. Now, between then and today, I had some days that were so crappy I can't wrap my brain around it. I had some days that were absolutely horrendous. Maybe as bad as being in. There were days that, after I got out there, it has not been all roses. That first year was just god-awful. And, working at a job I didn't want to be at, that whole situation was just awful. I got to work on my claustrophobia, 5 nights a week. And it was really an awful time to be me. And again, the reason I tell you this is because a lot of times we think that if we get rid of dope, everything will be groovy. And that's not the case at all. You got to get rid of the reasons you did dope, or at least come to grips with them. Niall has said some things that make me want to smack him in the head, but he's also said a couple of things that I thought were really poignant. And one of them was that when you get sober, you don't beat the demons. That never happens. You just sort of learn to walk with them. And that's one of those things that someone said that if I sit and ponder it for a long time, like I could just sit and meditate on that. I really could. Because, I don't think that I cured all of the things wrong with me. I do think that I figured out a way to live with them, right? Where I'm never going to be, air quotes normal. I'm not a normal guy. I wasn't built that way. But what's happened is you people, right? You people are, to me, what dope is was, for a really long time. That you are a coping mechanism. You really are. Last night I didn't do the lifeboat. Obviously, I had to go and get my daughter. And right around the time she's in the car and I'm driving home, and we were talking about her brother, right? Which happens often when we're together. And I just said, I'm so proud of him. Where he's at. He's into his second week of sobriety, and he's getting up every morning, and he's just doing everything he needs to do to remain sober. And she's like, yeah, I talked to him. And I thought, I really ought to be on the lifeboat right now. I really ought to be on the lifeboat right now, because it's just that I get that feeling that I'm overwhelmed, and I start feeling a little bit uncomfortable in my own skin, which is crazy, right? But I don't know how to be happy, and I don't know how to succeed. It's not something that I've got a lot of practice at. And every time I started to, I would sabotage myself so that it's so that I could get back to crappy, because I understood crappy. It's very similar to the gambling stuff that, I work with some gamblers, and they get addicted to the losing. Most people have a hard time wrapping their brain around that, but gamblers aren't gambling because they're addicted to winning. They're gambling because they're addicted to losing. They want to just get back to base level. As an addict, we don't want change, not of any kind. What we want is base level. And if that base level has sucked crap for 15 years, when you stop sucking crap, your brain's going to go, I don't know how to deal with this. This is novel, and I don't like it. Right? The organism, the host organism that carries this brain around is in danger if I don't get it back to that baseline feeling like crap. Obviously, and we beat the crap out of this drum, and we will continue to do so until I can no longer breathe. Obviously, the only defense we have for any of this is communication, right? The more that we tell people exactly what's going on in our head, the better a chance we have. Now, does that mean every one of us is going to win? Probably not. Probably not. That's the reality of life, and that's a tough reality when you build a family out of a group of people who are all drug addicts or alcoholics or whatever you want to call them. When we lose one, it's painful as hell. And what's crazy is that when you lose one and it's painful, what do? You come here and you talk about it. And we try not to say the names of people who have fallen off the wagon. We can say, we're praying for this person, right? But very often, because of the nature of what I do, I can't even tell you people that I know that somebody has fallen off the wagon, right? There's a confidentiality there. And again, I'm not a doctor, and I'm not a lawyer, but I'm not a scumbag either. So when I'm talking to somebody about the problems that are happening in his or her life, that stays with me. I mean, I don't even discuss these things with Fee. I don't discuss these things with family. So, there are times that there's a lot of emotions cooking around at the same time. Somebody fell off the wagon yesterday pretty horrendously, and it's somebody that I care a great deal for. And again, it's a pretty tough hand. I'm sitting on pocket aces. It's an unusual thing to be this content and still have the world going on around me. And I got watches I got to ship out today. I got there'll be plenty of people that I'm talking to today about where they're at in their life, and they're not going to be content. And there are going to be people that call and say, I'm getting ready to use right now. You got to talk to me. The world continues to move on, whether you're happy or sad. It's just that I don't know. I've never really done the happy thing for any length of time. I'm not going to do anything to screw it up, I assure you. I have come to the place in my life where I understand my screwed up brain. When you get sober, it doesn't mean you figure out everything and then everything is groovy. No, you just figure out everything, right? I am going to walk around for a good chunk of today feeling really uncomfortable. And I'm just going to tell people that. I'm not going to sit and let any of this stuff fester inside my head. Because if I do, then I will find a way to make it go away. I just want to feel normal. And this is subconscious crap. You realize that none of this is on the surface. You really got to dig. And you have to almost study your own mind as it relates to other people's minds and all of that. But when we get that feeling that, boy, you know what, things are so good, I don't know if I could take this. You just got a big promotion at work. A woman that you've been estranged with just comes back into your life. Or, a guy you thought you were never going to see again just proposes, right? There's something that happens that's just so over the top you think, holy crap, I won. You don't relapse completely for the sake of, I just don't know how to deal with this. That's the underlying. I promise you that's the underlying. But we talk ourselves at that time is, I'm going to celebrate. Life has never been this good, man. Life has never been this good. You talk about a time where getting high is going to feel great. Holy crap. I'm not running from anything, right? I feel great. If I did a little of this or a little of that or drank some of this, it's just going to be that much better, right? I'm celebrating. What's really happening is you're trying to sabotage yourself to get you back to crap because you understand how to deal with that. That is our base level, right? Our resting position is loser. Sad but true. And I don't mean you're a loser. I mean you've convinced yourself you're a loser for so long that if you start feeling like anything else, it just gets really foreign, right? Really, really foreign. And, that novelty and that foreign stuff is not something we deal with very well at all, right? So, I guess lead by example kind of thing. And it's funny, people, because I come in, I talk to you guys about sobriety for what? 2 hours a day, right? A lot of times, 2 hours a day. So, and then I talk to a bunch of you throughout the day, or I answer emails or whatever the case may be. So I would say a good chunk of my life revolves around sobriety, right? To be in the middle of that, right? And then have something like this happen. I got to go, all right, what would I tell the people on the boat to do? If somebody called me right now and said, you know what, everything in life is great, but I'm still so uncomfortable, what would I tell them? As stupid as that sounds, that's honestly how I deal with most of my problems. What would I tell anybody on the boat? I got to go back and it's funny because my bobbleheaded partner and I used to talk about this all the time, where something would come up and we'd be like, we got to figure out, I should maybe go back and watch some of my own videos and learn how to cope with what I'm coping with, because this is all pretty foreign. It really is. It's all foreign. And I'm not bummed out about that. I'm really not. It's going to take a little getting used to, because there is a decent chance that the way I feel right now might become my baseline. Holy crap. Like, that's a really hard one to wrap your brain around. Like, this could be the baseline. This kind of contentment could be everything. Really, really bizarre, But, sorry. Every once in a while, it's like I got to do a head check, and I truthfully had not thought of that concept until I just said it. Honestly. And I wonder about people that, you see things all the time. You see, an actor or somebody takes themselves out and you go, person's got everything. What in the hell would they do that for? They're rich, they're handsome, right? They're married to a supermodel, right? Why in the world would anybody like that? And it's the exact same thing. Whether you got a Ferrari in the driveway or a 1974 Datsun B210, right, with primer-colored quarter panels, what happens to an addict is what happens to an addict. It is literally the exact same emotions. The rest is window dressing. You get that, right? For real, it's window dressing. Take that same person who had the Ferrari, drop them into the Datsun. But if you change everything around them, they may be happier without all that BS. They may be happier. You realize how many people, and I'm coping with this right now in a big way. And this is one of the things that the lifeboat was. There's not a lot of drawbacks. There really isn't. I mean, yeah, I got to get up wicked early, and occasionally something really great will be happening in my life, and I'm just really happy and things are groovy, and then I get a phone call from someone whose life is falling apart, and I have to stop doing whatever I'm doing to help them, and that can be a pain in the keister too. But I wouldn't necessarily call those things drawbacks. But if there is a drawback of any kind on the lifeboat, it's that there are a lot of people who reach out to me on a daily basis to say thank you. And that's awesome. It really is. It's awesome. The thank you letters that I get, I save most of them. I really do. Like I have a folder full of just the most amazing things that people have talked about. And I don't mean talking about me. I mean talking about how their life has gone from this to that. Like those kind of emails are the best. The ones that go, and it's all you. You did this. Thank you. You. That to me is as hard to deal with as anything in the world. You spend the previous 15 years of your life with the baseline emotion that you are treated with is hate. And throw in some fear. Right? The people that you deal with on a daily basis either hate you or are really afraid of you. And that's kind of what you deal with for a long time. And then you get out of that crap environment that you're in with no color, right? And fluorescent light and, no smells. If you think about it, you're devoid of everything inside a prison. You only see in the federal system, all you see is khaki and gray. Those are the only two colors you're ever going to see, khaki and gray. So I left that environment, and within 3 or 4 weeks, this kind of stuff started. And I didn't start it here. I did it on a different platform, and I was just sort of easing my way into this social media thing to see if this concept would work, done in social media. And when it did, then I launched the big red button. But it's a very difficult thing to deal with when you go from being hated, and from having people who just look at you and go, boy, this guy's got nothing on the ball, right? You want to talk about a dude that does not have his life together. Boy, it's Tommy. You go from that to the majority of people who run into you think you really have all the answers. And I got news for you. I don't have all the answers. I don't. And one of the reasons that I really like it when someone says you're lucky is because I know I'm lucky. It's astounding that you people show up to listen to me. It is. And if I want to pat myself on the back and go, you know what, you're damn good at this, which I don't do. But if I did, I'd still just be lucky to have people show up. You know how many people are really good at anything and yet don't hit a level of success that they would like to? The level of success that I wanted to hit on this was people getting sober. It wasn't, I would like this many people, or I would like that, or I would like, any of that. I just wanted to know that what I was doing was helping people get sober. And that happened really quickly. And then the weird stuff comes, along with it. And, I'm not Brad Pitt, and I'm not somebody that steps outside their house and has people go, hey, it's him, which would really be a bummer. But I'm a drug addict just trying to stay sober. And I used that in a thumbnail the other day, and I actually had pushback. Like some people sent me emails that are like, no, you're not. Yeah, I am. You know what I mean? Like, trust me. If you start thinking you're not, go back to the first, step of this thing. Go back and read what page 2 was, right? When you wrote down what people would say about you if you weren't there to hear it. It's easy to start concentrating on page 3 and believing that's who you are. It may be who you're striving to be, but I don't think I'm ever going to hit that. I think that And I think if I did, I'd be in really serious trouble. I think that my life is striving to remain sober and to help other people get sober. I don't, this is, today is about as close to contentment as I've had. It's just bizarre. It really is. It's kind of a bizarre thing. And I'm not complaining, people. I'm really not. I'm just sharing because this is how I cope. And this morning's been a little difficult to cope with. I don't know about the feds, but in state, there were guys waiting to go to the feds and people telling them, you get a lot more rec time if you aren't too violent. I got news for you. Everything that they tell you when you're in jail waiting to go to the feds, everything they tell you about the feds is a lie. And it's funny if you go to the feds more than once. And I don't mean funny, haha, but I would sit in there and people would say, oh man, you're going to Club Fed. The feds are so much better than the state, and here's why. And I would just sit at the table and be like, everything he just told you is BS. Don't listen to anything that idiot said. Because if they're telling you that the feds are way better than a state prison, they either did their state prison in the worst place on earth, or they've never been to the feds. There was and I know this is off subject, but this actually comes up a lot, so I'm gonna nail this down. There was a bill called the Zimmerman Act. There was a guy that raped and killed a girl and took her across state lines in the process, and the girl was related to a senator. And I don't remember whether she was daughter or granddaughter or something like that, but the senator put together a bill that got rid of anything that made prison, made it so you could tolerate it. Because this guy had written a letter, right, to Zimmerman, taunting him. The criminal did. And there was a picture of him in his cell. And behind him was just wall-to-wall pictures of nude women. And he had a video game that he was playing. And, there was a boom box on the table. Like, if you looked, it just looked like this person's house was really disgusting. But he had enough stuff in there that it looked like it might be a house. So Zimmerman said, done. We're getting rid of all that. We're getting rid of the weights. We're not going to let these people work out and get huge. And we're going to get rid of, and I mean, they got rid of everything. Television's gone. Everybody loses the TV. And at the time, even a decade after most places had stopped, you could still smoke in the feds. And that was taken. Every single thing that you could call an amenity, anything that you could call like comforts, things from home, they got absolutely done with. Right? Got rid of all of them. So what you get now in the feds is the rec time. It doesn't matter whether you're good, bad, or indifferent. If you're at a low or you're at a supermax, you're going to get the same amount of rec time unless you're on full-time lockdown. If you're on full-time lockdown, then what you're going to get is 1 hour a day, and you get that 4 days a week. I did that for 4 years. Which was pretty uncomfortable. M. Hunt, when I first showed up here today, I sit here in front of the microphone, and sometimes I jot down notes, just a couple of bullet points, things that I want to get across. If it's a day like today, I don't really need to do that because I'm just sort of working through my own problems, which I realize is probably not great for everybody else, but that's kind of what I'm doing today. But I will glance over to the left and I'll see if you guys are talking at all. And M. Hunt said, every single day I feel better. Like my health is coming back, and it's coming back every single day. And you know what? That is a buzz. I mean it. And I don't know why it wouldn't be for all of you. Right? We build this family. We build this family. When somebody in the family starts really doing well, I know that it lifts everybody. It sure as hell lifts me. It really does. It's my drug of choice. It's my drug of choice. But yeah, this is a good time to be me. It might be too good a time to be me. I'm going to cope with what the day is going to bring by communicating with everybody that I care about, and just tell people that this is a tough one to get through. It's a tough one to cope with. Diary of the Madman says, control is in my brain and my brain is a junkie. So I got to suppress that trash attitude. I have to do 5 to 8 devotionals a day. Let me take issue with just one of those things. Your brain, and this is a misconception that all of us get when we first quit. And some people are there after 25 years, but we kind of assume that our brain runs this show. And our brain is so compartmentalized that there is a part of your brain that's trash. Make no mistake. And there is a part of your brain that would like to see you fail because they want to get back to that base level of funk, right? Where nothing is good, but at least we understand because nothing is good. I think that truthfully, to really, 1 year since my last shot of insulin, Tommy, that's absolutely amazing. That really is. That's absolutely amazing. So if you get part of your brain, if you can learn to control that part of your brain, then, I come out here and I say, there's no chance in hell I'm ever using dope again. And people, I get emails, man, don't say stuff like that. You don't know that. Don't say stuff like that. I know that. The part of my brain that would like to override that, I'm well aware of. And when it starts to rear its head in any way, this is what I do, right? I didn't come on here today and say, oh, it's so cool. My daughter's here and, we're having a really good time. And, it's so beautiful to have her here. And my son is sober, right? The world is perfect. I'm here saying, yeah, this is so foreign to me that I know the part of my brain that wants to get me jacked and have me lose all of this. The first thing it did, literally, for the first time in I don't know how long, last night I thought, this is about as content as I could be, right? I just talked to Fee, did a little 3-way conversation so she could say hi to my daughter, and my son is sober and my daughter's here and I'm going to bed so I can get up in the morning to do the lifeboat. Like, this is as good as it gets. And then I went in and I got into bed and I started reading a book. I try to bust out about an hour every night, and it's usually stuff that applies to this. And I was reading a book about the brain, oddly enough, and my daughter came in and gave me a hug and a kiss. And when she walked out, I thought, this is as content as I've ever been, right? As happy as I've ever been. Although, it's if you do a ton of heroin, or you do a ton of any opiate, it's a very similar kind of a feeling, and that's not a healthy thought. Right? That's a really unhealthy thought. And I don't have those thoughts. And when I did, I thought, that's really an unhealthy thought. Instantly, I started thinking, that's a crap thought, man. Like, you should not be having that thought. And the next thought was, I wonder what it does feel like for those people who have everything they want in life. They're completely content. And then you do an opiate, right? You got nothing for it to take away. What would happen? And this is the most dangerous thought in the entire world. So I got up, right, walked across the room, got my journal out, and started writing. And by the time I had put about 3 pages down, I realized just what a jackass I am. And I realized at what point during the day I really should have addressed this stuff. For real. I started going through my day and walking through it. And the feeling of weirdness started before my daughter got here. And I didn't address it. I didn't think about it. The mind is not your friend. It's not. But there's a part of your mind that can be your friend. There is a part of your mind that if you get control over that part of your mind, then you can control the rest of it. And I know that sounds, psychobabbly or whatever, but what it really comes down to is the emotional part of your brain ain't your friend. The emotional part of your brain should never be allowed to take the wheel. Sadly, we let the emotional part of our brain take the wheel, do the navigating, any maintenance that needs to be done, right, on the vehicle. We let a part of our brain that is just absolutely worthless take over. You do not make good decisions when the emotional part of your brain, the reactive part of your brain, is pulling the trigger. You don't. So my goal all the time is to go from back here to up here. And all of the things that I talk about on the lifeboat that people get sick of hearing me say are all designed to bring that the active part of your brain to get it out of the reactive part of your brain and into the logic part. You can't journal using only emotions. It's impossible. Literally. In order to journal, in order to be able to take a thought and send it down your arm, right, so that you can write it out on a piece of paper, you need to use the thought part of your brain in a really huge way. Huge way. That's why I scream about journaling all the time. If you start feeling really uncomfortable in your own skin, whether that's too good or too bad, you start having that feeling like this is foreign and I'm not sure I know how to cope with this. I say, what's the first thing, right? You need to reach out to somebody and start talking. Well, the reason you do that is an emotion can get you angry and you can be really pissed when you're talking to somebody. But if you sit down and calmly start having a conversation, I don't mean to yell and one and throwing things against the wall, right? That's not a communication. That's emotion. But if you can sit down and start using the logic part of your brain, it's another one of the reasons, believe it or not, people, one of the reasons I say quit cursing. Quit cursing. One of the reasons I really think that that's important, I don't care about the curse. I really don't. F-bombs are not going to offend me. I did, a decade in prison. I don't think there's a lot you could say that's going to offend me. But they end up as commas. For real, right? So and so and I were hanging out and we were effing, doing, and it's like when you need to pause for a second, when it's a comma, you throw out an F-bomb. And you hear them 3 or 4 times in one sentence. What it does is, it keeps you from having to really think about what the next word is going to be. It keeps you from having to try to formulate a sentence to explain what's going on. I can just put in these words and people will know what I'm talking about based on how the tone I use when I use the F. Crazy, right? But it's the truth. If you force yourself to engage more, if you force yourself to use the frontal lobes more, right? Get out of the reactive and get into the thought. Anything you can do that's going to focus your brain, laser focus your brain. Diary of a Madman said, you know what? I need to do 5 to 8 devotionals a day. Well, you're certainly moving stuff away from the emotional part of your brain and into the logic. You're not doing one of those studies. If you're not, here in the front, you're simply not. Let's see something here. I tend to react instead of taking a proactive response. Dominic, all of us do. All of us do. Trust me when I tell you you're not unique in that. That is what makes us drug addicts. True story. We do the reactive stuff. A top activist named Kevin Blanche uses the F word to a fault. You know what? I've heard really intelligent people who curse all the time. I really have. I don't know that it doesn't always sound to me like a person's intelligent if every other word they use is F, because it cuts down on your vocabulary, right? Obviously, they say it takes 1,200 words. If you learn to write 1,200 words, you can communicate with anybody about anything. You might not know the word broccoli, but you can say vegetable, green, right? And you can start to work, kind of comes up into, you can use those 1,200 descriptive words so that you can communicate at any level. But if you get out of that crap and you start trying to use words in such a way that, not like you're trying to impress anybody with your vocabulary, but yourself, like you're actually, I like to engage my mind when I'm talking. I like to not just do the whole diarrhea of the mouth thing. I would like to be able to actually try to come up with words that are going to get my point across in a way that I feel good about. And I can't do that from the reactive part of my brain. I can't do that from the emotional part of my brain. And for those people that have been on the boat long enough, they've seen me melt down, right? In every single way that I could melt down. They've watched me emotionally distraught, where I'm just, it's usually after somebody that we care about passes away. Those are really tough days. And emotion, no matter how hard you try to communicate, emotions, doing a whole lot of that work. I curse like a sailor, but I also was a litigator. So so I couldn't curse in court, but it's good sometimes to drop that F-bomb. I don't have a problem with dropping the F-bomb. I don't care what the language is. Anything, though, that becomes so ingrained that you don't have to think about it is not your friend. When it comes to sobriety, anything that you do that is just completely and utterly devoid of thought is probably not such a great thing. Now, that being said, a day will come where I always said that if I went to a psychologist, I would have him on that couch before the appointment was over. Just a quick story, because that's one of the funniest things. I sat down with a with a psychologist in the feds, and we had a 2-hour session. They were getting ready to have me take an IQ test, because it's difficult to figure out exactly what's going on with the whole traumatic brain injury thing. So they want to get a baseline of what your IQ is, so that a year later they can test your IQ and they can see if it's doing anything, right? If it's dropping, that's not a good sign, and they at least have something to go on. But before we could get rolling, this person wanted to talk to me about, the where I was in life and what was going on and all of this. And I talked to this person about my daughter, about my son, about how I got to prison, about how, I got stabbed, and while I was in the SHU, I got the Dear Tommy letter from my wife, who was my defense attorney in the last case, right? So I got through to the end of this thing, and I looked over at this poor woman, and her jaw was like down here, and she just had this, she went, "Good God." And then I got the standard, "You should write a book." I get that all the time. And if you're one of those people, don't tell me I should write a book. Don't email me and tell me I should write a book. Don't tell me it would be a great book. Don't do that. If I had the capability of writing that way, I'd be doing that. You know what I mean? I'm not that guy. I'm really not. And this is probably, I believe it or not, am wicked. I mean, hideously learning disabled. True story. And it's not, obviously I can talk, and obviously I can think, but getting this to that does not work. It just doesn't work. If growing up, I struggled really badly with spelling. I struggled really badly with any kind of punctuation or anything. And if, like, let's say I knew the word I wanted to use, but if I didn't know how to spell it, I would just use, 2 or 3 other words that are considerably smaller. And then, or not as good an example of what I should have been saying. I suppose I could sit down and just try to talk into a machine and then have somebody, but I don't think that's what I'm supposed to be doing. I think that that would allow me to spend an awful lot of time thinking about me. You know what I mean? I think that I struggle with typing on this tiny phone. Are you kidding? Good Lord. I have the biggest phone in the whole world and I still struggle with it. Captain, I struggle with that now. I used to be honors English, believe it or not. Full of hope. Good to see you. I wrote poetry. It really helped. My psychologist did a case study on me. She had an absolute admiration of my resilience and IQ. You got to love that. You really do. And, there was I'm trying to remember who said it. There's a poet who said, not all men drink because they're poets. Some men drink because they're not poets. And then I read a book that this person was interviewed, and he explained that. And that was just one of those expressions that just, like, I could sit like this and sort of meditate on that. The people that were able to just, bleed on the paper, it's their therapy. It's like what I'm doing right now. And they do that either with poetry, or they do that with, writing a novel, but putting pen to paper, putting, ink to paper was a coping mechanism that worked for them. And I envy that. I really do. I envy that. And I think a lot of the people who can't do that, and they can't get all of that stuff out. They end up crawling into a bottle or a syringe or whatever else. I did journalism in high school, got a letter of recommendation from my teacher. Awesome. A doctor told me that my severe dyslexia and transposition was due to head injuries when I was a child. It was terrible to deal with and still is. I know. Trust me, I know. As far as, I don't do it with letters, but I do it with numbers. And the amazing thing is, I'm the worst mathematician on the planet, but which is why I always do I was told there would be no math joke, but I can do it in my head. I really can. Like if I go to a grocery store, I can throw everything into the cart. And by the time I get there, I'll know exactly how much money I spent because I can do that in my head. But if I had to take that and write it down, right, or transpose it, if I have the time to look at something and it's only three or four numbers, I'm good. But when we start getting into 6 or 7 numbers, or I have to start writing them down, I transpose numbers. I just do. I transpose numbers. And it's always been really, really difficult for me. I didn't learn to read until the 5th grade, but put in a great deal of work to make up for it. Well, you're pretty damn good at reading and writing these days. For real. I've read a lot of your stuff. Look up complex PTSD and see if any of the stuff resonates, CK. I'm learning most personality disorders and mood disorders are actually from unhealed and unaddressed childhood trauma. I think I'll gather the 30 years of poetry and get it bound for posterity. Some of it is so dark, yet you can feel the change after you're saved, after Yahusha. M. Hunt says, wow, Coburn, that's impressive. Congrats. I want to tell you something. That's worthy of congrats. Coburn and I shoot correspondence back and forth to each other. And he is an absolutely incredible, he's really a good writer. He's a guy that definitely gets his point across and does it with some style. Buddha, good to see you. I do it with letters, typing on keyboards or numbers, even writing sentences. Put the end of the thought at the beginning and the beginning at the first part of the end, and then I have to start all over. That was my struggle. That's why I developed the communication part of my brain the way that I did, because I thought I couldn't tell anybody. There was just this thing about, I don't know. I didn't want to be thought of as stupid. I didn't want to be thought of as different. I didn't want to be thought of as challenged or any of that. So I would come up with ways to just not do the work and, just look like I was a drug addict blowing stuff off. I was a partier, right? Instead of just somebody that couldn't do it. And that was a very big part of my my high school career, went like that. But I realized that if I could, I'd stay after and I would have a conversation with teachers, and a lot of them would just be like, the dude understands everything we're talking about. Like he understands the subject matter as good as, as well as anybody. And very often they just sort of push me through, you know what I mean? Like, toss him a C+, And then I got better at taking classes that were really heavy on presentation and really heavy on like oral reports and things like that. You learn to avoid the things you're not good at and really accentuate the ones that you are. I was accused of cheating in my math classes because I never showed my work. So they would always give me Fs. So I just quit doing it. And now I don't remember any of it. Mr. Wolf, that's tragic. That is absolutely tragic. I mean that. That's our education system is so bad. I definitely have PTSD. Found my best friend dead when I was 24. Found my mother dead when I was 29. And my little brother hung himself in 2021. I would absolutely be, I would be doing everything within my power to talk to people about that. Professionals. I really would. I think that's really hard. I can't imagine. And I do know PTSD. Trust me, I know PTSD, but I can't imagine if it was personal. My PTSD is from watching some people get killed, but they were not They weren't people that meant much to me. They were just people in the unit, or people that were, I saw a guy get stomped to death across the hall from me, and it really kind of changed me, and not for the better. But I struggle with that one. And Diary says, I don't know why, but God made my life this way for a reason. If that's the thought process, well, then I think your job is to find out what that reason is, right? I believe there's something to that. I said, I don't know what special is. That means I can't write my name fast enough for you, a-hole. My history teacher laughed as my English teacher got mad. Scoob, that's awesome. That's awesome. I know I've told this story on the show before, but I gave up on education at a very young age. I really did. And it was Columbus Day. And it was Columbus Day 1976. And they were discussing, and again, my ability to communicate orally I was usually about 5 or 6 years ahead, really. So, by this time I was this was first grade. So I was probably doing a little bit better than, the 6th grade level. Communicating, writing down, I probably wasn't even, to the kindergarten level yet. But they were talking about Columbus Day and, 1492, and he discovered America, and he found these native people living here. Well, that one didn't make a hell of a lot of sense to me. Even at 6, that didn't make any sense. So I asked, I said, how do you discover a place that people already are? You know what I mean? Like, that doesn't make sense. And the teacher said, oh no, well it does, because, no one had found, America yet. There were people there, but no one had found it. I'm like, well, of course somebody friggin' found it. How the hell did the people get there if they didn't find it? And I wasn't trying to be combative. I really wanted to understand what the hell she was talking about. And I got sent to the office. And I remember going home and talking to Papa Scoville, and I was like, this messed me up. I was really upset. And he said to me, Tommy, they don't want you to learn. That's not what they teach you for. They're going to teach you to be a good employee. They're going to teach you to show up on time, do what you're asked, and don't do a whole hell of a lot more than that. And don't think. Whatever you do, don't think. So if you know that they're idiots, just keep that one upstairs. Come home and we'll talk about it. And I really did I did a decent amount of coming home and shooting the breeze with my dad. I spent a lot of time doing that, and it was good for me. I think he probably taught me a whole hell of a lot more than I learned in any kind of formal training. I was really blessed to have a dad that was very into trying to pass knowledge on to his kids. It's just a God-given blessing is what that was. Which one did you lose, Lady Fiona? Yeah, you know what, M. Hunt, and he was pretty consistent with the. He really was. My dad was. I think that he was one of the wisest people I've ever met. Now, he also had issues, and I'm telling you this because he said to me, when I leave, don't let everybody eulogize me like I was the greatest guy in the whole world. He said, some of the biggest dicks you've ever met die, and then they become saints. He said, I don't want that. You tell people the truth. And my dad was one of the most impatient people you've ever met in your life. He really was. He was so impatient on stupid stuff. Horrendously impatient. On the big things, he was incredible. But really small stuff. Like pulling up to the road where we lived in Vermont. We lived in the middle of nowhere. I mean, nowhere. We were in the sticks. There was like 800 people in the town I grew up with. So if we pulled down to the bottom and we had to wait, we might have to wait 30 seconds for a car to go by. But my dad would lose his mind. I live in the middle of east nowhere. I got to come down here and wait. And it became, a standard joke. We used to get a kick out of it. But that was who he was. He struggled with really stupid stuff. He was amazing at the big things, though. Charlie Murphy says, hit that like button and share, please. And I don't say that enough. I really don't. I really don't. Hit that button, share. A lot of you have been sharing. I was looking at that yesterday. A lot of you have been sharing. It's a beautiful thing. I really mean it. Full of Hope says, have a great day, everyone. That's a pretty good ender right there, isn't it? And that brings us to the top of the hour. Amazingly, this little snot was in her basket until like 2 seconds ago. Come here. Come on. Let's say goodnight. What do you... Hey. That was a cat. And now she's back in her basket. She's pretty happy about it. Trainee, good to see you. Is that Trainee? Yeah, Trainee Human, good to see you. Everybody have a blessed day, okay? Please. I will be back this evening, about 12 hours from now, or 11 hours from now. Between now and then, reach out and try to save somebody. And if you're struggling with anything, don't do it in silence. You know, a lack of communication is just what your addiction wants. It wants you to just shut up and try to deal with it yourself. That's your brain hopes you do that because you will relapse and you will do it quickly. My cat is attacking her own tail. Very, very intelligent animal. The rubber has met the road. The cravings have started. Yippee! You got this. You got this. Alrighty, peeps. We will see you this evening. God bless.